Hey guys, it's Matthew here once again with one of those rare videos where we just have a bit of a discussion, talk about stuff. So for the upcoming 3.2 patch expansion, there will be 5 manifestos coming. The second one that just released was the Archnemesis one, which had potential to be a very big game changer in either the right or wrong direction for the game, and it was released today, and it is a bit of a game changer. So just going to go over it a bit and then talk about the implications and just in general how Archnemesis was and the design around it. So basically, it is being walked back, so reverted. If you asked me before today, what would they be doing with Archnemesis? It's really, really hard to predict with GGG, especially these days. The direction they're going, like community, not community, vision, whatever. It's really hard to predict what they might do. I would not have, however, said that they're going to walk back Archnemesis, like revert it, because it seemed like it was just way too much of a commitment into this system and into this change for the future of the game. But that is pretty much what's happened, like almost an entirely full reversion of it. So to go over it real quick in case you somehow missed it, what we have here is the balance manifesto. Let me just move that up a bit. The balance manifesto for Archnemesis. Basically what Archnemesis was is a system where a lot of the rare monsters in the game got changed to have more wacky shit, be tougher, be more impactful to your overall gameplay. By the end of last league, I think it actually had an okay place in the game. By the start of this league again, they doubled it up again, and it started to feel pretty jarring. By another month in, a lot of changes, a lot of fixes and all that, I think it was actually in an okay enough place. But that said, not too many people really liked it, and was it really adding towards the game? Debatable. Either way, essentially what's happening now is that they're going to be walking back on that, and the system for rares will once again be kind of like what it was before, a bit more simplified, a bit more straightforward, but still a bit of a revamp, a bit spicier. So you can think of it as kind of like Nemesis 2.0. So each mob, instead of having what Archnemesis does now, which is like one particular Archnemesis line that does a whole bunch of shit that makes the mob tougher, and then once it stacks to like 3 or 4 Archnemesis, that means the mob has like an extra 20 modifiers in a list that you don't even know what they do unless you look it up and memorize everything. Instead of that, each Archnemesis mod is basically going to do one thing. It's going to be pretty obvious, and it'll make the mob tougher in one certain way. It can still stack up from like 2 to 4, and thus once you'll occasionally fight this rare mob that has some combo of shit, you'll be like, oh hey, that's a bit of a different fight, but it shouldn't be anything too clusterfucky and too painful on a character that isn't really ready for it. So that's essentially what happened. They outlined like the issues that we had with it. Some felt like they were a bit, a bit less of an issue than others, but there were a few very glaring ones. And then the goal was to just simplify things once again, come back to a system where rares were a bit more, I don't know, a bit more manageable, I suppose, because Archnemesis definitely stepped things up, and especially when it was integrated to begin with, without all of the testing that we put through it. After a lot of changes, it became a much more palatable system, but before, when it was first implemented, it was like, holy shit, this is a completely different game and a completely different way of playing, and it's a tough pill to swallow. It felt like it raised the bar for a lot of builds for what they needed to achieve, the boxes they needed to tick to be able to comfortably do the game. And even then, once you've got every box you could possibly tick, there's still going to be some situations where you're like, my god, that's just not nice. So that's basically what it all is. The other big thing is that Archnemesis reward structure. Currently, you see a certain Archnemesis mod, and if it's one of the rare ones, you'll be like, okay, I know that's going to drop a certain amount of jewels, or some flasks or some shit, or maybe even some big currency and all of that. So they have special reward structures. That's still kind of going to stay the same according to them, but it's going to be more hidden, so you won't really know necessarily which mob is going to drop what. It's going to be a bit more, behind the scenes. So you're still killing everything. If you were killing everything before, you're still trying to kill everything. It's just that you won't know necessarily which mob you should be skipping if you previously were like, that one's not worth it, it's a bit tough, it's not going to drop anything good anyway. Now you just kill everything, and sometimes you're going to get a big loot explosion, sometimes you're not. And that is more to combat the loot goblin meta and fiasco. And what that is narrowing in on is that a lot of people saw these sorts of big Archnemesis monsters that had potential to drop lots of currency, and if they didn't get someone to come in with Magic Find, or they didn't log on to their Magic Find character, they would feel like they missed out on a huge potential payday. I personally, and I know a lot of people personally, really didn't see it that way. You'd see the mob, you'd be like, oh cool, maybe an extra divine, kill it, move on. But you can understand that some people that maybe don't play as much or have a real analytical mind about this, that think, I want to maximize my gains, and if I had a very obvious chance to maximize my gains right there and didn't, I completely fucked up and I missed out on the payday. So now basically it's gone back to a system where you can still build into quantity and rarity like you could before, and then over a course of time you'll be rewarded for it, as opposed to a specific instance where you'll be rewarded for it. So instead of like feeling like you've missed out on that one particular instance, if you don't build into rarity and quantity on your entire character right from the get-go, if you've made the decision at the beginning of your character and its build style to not go Magic Find or rarity, you've missed out right from the get-go. And that is how the system basically always was, and how it always is in other games, with the rarity bonuses and all that shit. If you want to build a rarity character, you do, you'll be rewarded over time. If you don't, you value effectiveness, speed, whatever, and then you'll still get rewarded over time, but much less than someone that builds into that. And I think that tackles the loot situation, or the loot goblin situation, perfectly, so that's totally fine, I'd say. And overall, as far as loot is concerned, you'll still have people saying loot is, nerfed from before and lower and all that. As far as I can tell, no. Like, maybe if you're talking about juicing, and maybe if you're talking about like card farming on the high end of maps and all that, I'm not too clued into that. But the Alk and Go play style that a lot of us employ, just playing the game, running maps, all that sort of shit, I've got so much goddamn currency from the past league playing. Fixes came in and buffs and changes and whatever. I've never had so much actual raw currency of almost everything across the board. We are talking, yes, whetstones, yes, armor scraps, obviously those kind of suck, augments, alterations, alchemies, scours, GCPs, chisels. Like, I've damn near capped out to 5,000 on all of those sorts of currencies, except for, obviously chaos and GCPs, but all those others basically capped out to 5,000 and stopped picking stuff up a long time ago because there's too much of it. I've never had so much currency from a single league just by playing the game normally. Still see divines all the time, especially with Lake of Calandra. It was actually pretty rewarding in the end. If you didn't play it, you'd average like a divine every 2 or 3 lakes probably. Yeah, currency for the normal player seems to be in a good spot, and loot in general, I'd say, seems to be in a good spot. Maybe that's just some sort of shill take, but I know I haven't had a problem, and I know lots of people have not had a problem. But to talk more about Archnemesis and the system, it is being walked back, and it is coming back to what the game kind of was. And if you hated Archnemesis, I think you be back into a very pleasant surprise for 3.2 as an enjoyable gameplay expansion, because it should feel roughly the same, but there's a whole bunch more stuff than there used to be. There's Atlas trees, there's different reward structures for killing rares, there's going to be 3.2 whatever the fuck they bring to the table, buffs, nerfs, new skills, league mechanic. Overall, I do think the game will be really enjoyable and playable for you once again. But to address what I've seen lots of, it's like, holy fucking shit, they finally listened to us. I can't believe they did this. You know, why would they even try? What are they trying to do here? How could they do this to us? As if you didn't read and understand the whole Archnemesis thing to begin with, what their goals were and what they were trying to do. You just ignored that part entirely. Like, obviously, they were trying something different. They were going for a bold strategy of mixing the game up because to them, Archnemesis was a solution to a bit of a stale, rare system and mechanic in the game from 10 years ago now that just has left rare mobs in PoE feeling like cannon fodder. It's nothing. You run in, you kill it, basically nothing drops, it puts up no resistance, and they were trying to bring back some level of gameplay to PoE in the mapping sense. If you don't really pay too much attention to other communities and shit, a lot of the sentiment I've seen from people that don't play PoE but have been recommended PoE across other forums and shit is this game is a mess. It's very complicated, it's intimidating to get into, but then the gameplay at the end of the day is just a big clusterfuck of shit dying very quickly, the game's very fast, and the combat is basically meaningless. So you get lots of praise for Diablo 3's fluid combat, that sort of thing, and PoE gets the complete opposite, and basically rightfully so, because once you get a certain point in your character's progression, you're just running around deleting screens, and it gets pretty ridiculous. And Archnemesis was supposed to be a system to kind of combat that and bring things back to more meaningful gameplay, meaningful combat. Was it the best in the end? No, not really. Like, there was lots of problems. Maybe more testing needed to happen. Maybe some things that went in shouldn't have gone in. At the end of the day, I think the actual issue is that Pandora's box has been opened. The genie is out of the bottle and you can't put it back in. PoE has gone too far in a certain direction, has too much of a certain player base that you can't really walk back on this we're killing shit, we're godlike creatures in maps scenario to much more meaningful gameplay without everyone feeling worse about their situation or as if they've lost something, some huge amount of power in their characters. So I think that at its core is the issue with Archnemesis and its failure as a system. It's that PoE has already gone too far in a certain direction, that bringing it back to this tougher situation where every now and again you are coming across mobs that just slow you down a lot in your gameplay, that feel a lot tougher to fight even than bosses and stuff. You just can't do that because it shifts the way you're playing far too much unless it really rewards you in a certain direction. You feel like you've lost a lot of player power, when in reality, currently, characters have potential to be stronger than basically they've ever been. And if you just compare it to normal bosses, we're talking guardians and regular shapers and shit like that, we've basically never had so much power and deletion on such a large scale of even hipster builds across the board. There's still lots of stuff to discover, still lots of builds out there, still lots of crazy shit you can do, and yet still be more powerful than you've ever been before. But then Archnemesis is the system that tried to slow that down everywhere else as well. So I think that's been too far in one direction, that bringing in Archnemesis like this, it just can't really work in current Path of Exile with the progression we've had and the player base that you now have to then bring it back. I know there's people out there that have enjoyed this. I know some of them. I've talked to plenty of them. Some people are welcoming something like this, and they're a bit sad to see Archnemesis like this go, because it brings back a bit more tougher combat, and you can be a bit more scared on the routine. But the vast majority don't really want that. And that also brings me to another thing, that PoE just isn't what it used to be. Like, the system of always having to always be scared in this game just doesn't really work anymore. Back then, maybe it kind of worked because it's a much smaller game in scope and in what you're doing. So, some combat's meaningful and you're slowly building up, and then you finally get to one of 3 bosses that are out there, and it's a bit tougher. And that's basically all there is to it. Nowadays, there is some big scary content out there, and you go looking for it if you want it. And let's say compared to back 8 years ago or some shit when combat was slower and more meaningful, there's like 3 bosses or something, or even just map bosses are a bit harder and that's all there is to it. Now there's like literally 50 fucking encounters and bosses that you can look forward to that'll probably challenge you, especially on a weaker character. They'll challenge you across the board, and you build up for that, you go into that, you get your challenge, you get your hard gameplay, and then you can chill for a bit. Whereas Archnemesis, the whole system and this sort of thing, basically led itself to this gameplay where you can never really chill or enjoy yourself, and then you've still got that big end game boss sort of style to look forward to as well, which is just more challenge. So that's basically, it's just a different game, I think. Ultimately, you can't, like with Archnemesis, it basically put you on edge of your seat and you had almost no chilling gameplay, or just, you know, chill gameplay, not chilling gameplay anymore. And when there's already so much tough, challenging stuff to look forward to, you didn't need to constantly stress your player base out. People that want that stress can go looking for it, and there's lots and lots of it out there. People that don't want it, you know, it's fine. And the other thing is, you can't really hate GGG for trying. This game is what it is because of all of the innovation, all of the risks they take, all of the testing of new systems. You can't have the most out there, innovative, complex, deep ARPG on the market after 10 years without the way that they've done things, which is lots of trial and error, lots of attempt at innovation. Some things work, some things don't. So it's been like 40 leagues, and they're trying to bring something new to the table almost every single league. And some things work, and they're mind-blowing, and holy shit, can't believe they thought of that. And some things don't, and you're just like, give that one a miss. The real big issue here is usually those are like league mechanics and like side content, and you can choose to like it and engage with it, or you can choose to not like it and just leave it alone. Whereas this was a bit of a risk, a bit of a gamble, and a bit of a game changer across the core game. So you were kind of forced into interacting with something you don't like, and that's why it felt particularly bad. I think that's all I wanted to say, and I think that covers everything for the topics. Yeah, ultimately, Archnemesis was a system I wasn't in love with, but it got better over time, and it was at a point where I thought it was manageable. I didn't really think it was super good for the game, but at this point, I didn't think it was super bad. It was just kind of okay after all the fixes. To have it reverted, honestly, it's probably going to be a more enjoyable game for me and many people, but I could see how some people have lost some more of their challenge, and I guess, hey, Ruthless Mode exists. Go get them, right? But, you know, to just be a bit of a GGG shill, you really can't hate them for trying this sort of shit, especially when you know where they're coming from, of trying to slow the game down, trying to have combat be more meaningful. But at the same time, my, like, sort of take on that entire thing and, you know, advice is, it's basically too late for that. That is not the game that they have, and that is not the game that you've got. So you can't really take it back in that direction anymore, I don't think. Maybe to some extent here or there, but for the most part, people just kind of want cooler, funner shit to go a bit faster. Yep, rein them in occasionally, balance changes and all that, but a big change on a scope like this, which changes the gameplay across the board to just be more difficult and painful, just won't fly anymore. Other than that, yeah, you got PoE 2, and that's their one big chance to, you know, showcase a whole new campaign where you can have slower, more meaningful gameplay, combat, next generation sort of ARPG. But then the mapping, it's basically going to go straight back to what it currently is and pretty much how it has to be at this point. So PoE 2 is just going to be, you know, a fun, big campaign, I think. And some really cool moments and some nice new graphics and all that, new skills and gameplay and all that. But I think the end game and the mapping system is pretty much going to be how it is, because you just can't walk back on it anymore. So that's Archnemesis. I hope that rant and discussion was of some use to you. So yeah, look forward to logging in next time, I think. I think the game's in a good state right now. This is going to make it much more playable for those that are worried about the current gameplay. Thank you very much for watching. See you guys next time.